Hey there, my good friend. I'm honestly so glad you clicked on this video. Your presence means everything, and if you hit that subscribe button, you'd make my day even brighter. Now let's get into it. Cameron Decker never chased attention, yet somehow leadership always found him. He was the calm when things spiraled, the voice others looked to when direction felt lost. Whether guiding his team at the architecture firm he co-founded or standing beside Joanna, the woman he loved more than comfort or convenience, Cameron was the constant. Their story began back in college. She was magnetic, clever, fiercely driven. He was introspective, measured, quietly intense. Their relationship wasn't without flaws, but it carried weight. It mattered. For 30 years, Cameron built their life with care, following the shared vision they'd once daydreamed about. Summers in Maine. A wraparound porch based on a scribble she drew after one too many glasses of wine. A backyard garden she spoke of more than she touched. He never did it for acknowledgement. He did it because he believed in what they were creating. That belief began to crack one cold Tuesday in October, beneath a sky the color of ash. His flight from Denver had landed ahead of schedule, and instead of waiting for his driver, Cameron opted to surprise her. The brisk air of Chicago bit at his skin as he approached their house, heart light with the thought of her delight, especially when she saw the takeout from her favorite Thai spot. But the front door wasn't locked, and the house was unnaturally still. Inside, his footsteps seemed to shout against the silence. Then, faint voices, a soft giggle, a man's murmur that wasn't his. His heart thudded as he moved toward the sunroom. And there she was, Joanna, lounging in one of his old sweatshirts, her body language relaxed and unmistakably intimate as she leaned toward an unfamiliar man. She said something that made them both laugh, not with hesitation, but with the ease of something well-worn. Cameron didn't say a word. He simply stood, frozen. 6 long seconds, just enough for her to notice him. Her expression shifted, a blink, then a scoff that stung worse than shouting. "Back early?" she said flatly, tugging at the hem of the sweatshirt as though modesty could somehow erase betrayal. His hands remained steady, his jaw locked. His mind began to move. She rolled her eyes as if he were being irrational. "Cam, seriously? It's not what it looks like? Don't make a big deal." No remorse, no apology, just indifference in the shape of a shrug. He walked out, not in surrender, but in search of clarity. No confrontation, no calls, just silence and the road. He drove through the places that had shaped them. Neighborhoods where they imagined growing old, the cafe where she'd cried over a miscarriage, the library where he once waited under pouring rain just to walk her home. And through every mile, one truth echoed louder than anything else. She had already let go. Of him. Of them. Of the life they'd built together. By the following morning, Joanna behaved as though nothing had happened. She brewed coffee, chatted about his work trip, critiqued the neighbor's Halloween display with casual humor. Cameron watched her. Suddenly, all the little signs added up. The so-called girls' weekends, the hushed phone calls from the pantry, the emotional distance she chalked up to being busy. She hadn't just drifted, she'd disappeared. And he, without realizing it, had been clutching at her shadow. But he didn't beg. He didn't lash out. Instead, he decided to reclaim the narrative. Quietly, precisely. That very day, he made 3 key moves. First, he called his lawyer. Then, he set up a private digital network and began archiving everything. Texts, purchases, location data, all synced from devices she assumed he'd forgotten. Lastly, he dialed a number he hadn't used in over 10 years. Lucas Tran, his old military comrade turned cyber forensics expert. "I want everything," Cameron said. "You'll get it," Lucas replied. By nightfall, Cameron had a blueprint, and Joanna had no idea that the man she once dismissed as too passive had become her most calculated threat. For weeks, Joanna continued life as if nothing had shifted. She hosted book club, posted latte pics with captions like "grateful for quiet moments," kissed Cameron goodbye like clockwork. But he had traded innocence for clarity. And now he observed her with the same precision he once used to earthquake-proof buildings. She was predictable. Pilates at 9 a.m. sharp. Grocery runs at regular intervals. A burner phone she thought went unnoticed. She paid with cash. Thought she covered her trail. She hadn't. Lucas unearthed everything. Hidden accounts, hotel bookings, encrypted chats, even an old Gmail account under her maiden name. The other man? Dominic Fields. Middle management in marketing. 2 divorces. A dating profile reactivated the same weekend Joanna had claimed to be meditating off-grid. Cameron didn't flinch. He cataloged it all. Every discovery filed neatly into a folder labeled deconstruction. Joanna picked up on the shift. "You're a little quiet lately," she said one morning, easing into the kitchen with forced casualness. He looked up from his screen. "Work's intense." "You're not still sulking over that misunderstanding?" she asked, brushing off the memory like lint. "It didn't mean anything, just a lapse." He locked eyes with her, then gave a small, reassuring smile. "Of course, it's forgotten." She seemed satisfied, but she didn't realize the ground she stood on was soaked in gasoline, and Cameron already held the match. His revenge would not be loud, it would be exact. He began reallocating assets. Quiet transfers. Legal paperwork adjusted. Funds placed in secure trusts. Her access quietly revoked from dormant investment accounts. Property titles updated, including the lake cabin she adored and always claimed as ours. She never knew it had always been listed under his company. To the world, he played the role of the devoted husband. He bought her gifts, met friends for brunch, chuckled at her memes. But in the background, he was disassembling the life she thought would never end. Each night, more data. Each week, another thread pulled from the fabric of her illusion. Eventually, he walked into a law firm, one he had retained in secret. He handed over 2 thick folders, one containing divorce proceedings, the other a digital dossier of her betrayal. "I want both prepared," he said, "but don't file just yet." "Waiting for the right moment?" the lawyer asked. Cameron shook his head, waiting for her to believe she's won. That moment arrived sooner than expected. Feeling unchecked, Joanna grew bolder. Her remarks more cutting, her tone more liberated. She even suggested taking separate vacations. "We've kind of evolved into more of a partnership than a marriage," she mused one evening, as though the idea were noble. Cameron allowed himself a faint smile. Perhaps the tide had finally begun to turn. Joanna lit up, certain she was finding her balance again. In her mind, she'd reframed the narrative. She wasn't culpable, only misunderstood. It was Cameron who had grown cold. They had simply started drifting apart, naturally and without blame. Tentatively, she began to re-enter the social scene. She started to drop careful hints that she and Cameron were parting ways amicably, like 2 rational adults reaching a mutual decision. But in reality, Cameron was laying the groundwork for a total, irreversible departure, emotionally, legally, financially, and socially. The clarity struck him on a quiet evening when he overheard her speaking in hushed tones on the phone, laughing softly in a playful cadence. She was telling Dominic how free she finally felt, how she could breathe again, and how Cameron had never inspired passion, just filled a space. The word that broke something inside him was comfortable. That single word splintered years of loyalty. He had offered her steadiness, trust, and depth, and she reduced it to something lukewarm. That night, Cameron wrote a letter, not laced with anger, not designed to punish, just honest, unflinching, detached. He didn't give it to her. Instead, he folded it carefully and placed it somewhere safe, ready for the day he would leave it behind on the kitchen counter. The day it would all come undone. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Heavy cream-colored stationery with gold trim, addressed in Joanna's elegant script. It was an invitation. Celebrate 30 years of marriage. Cameron and Joanna. She had arranged everything herself. An extravagant ballroom, a chef-designed menu, live music, and a guest list topping 80. Just sharing the news gave her a triumphant gleam, as though she had secured a private victory and was now putting it on display. Cameron played his role well. He smiled, gave opinions on the wine pairings, even suggested a jazz trio for the cocktail hour. Behind the scenes, he forwarded every final detail to his legal team. It would be her evening, her perfect show, but also the stage for her downfall. Joanna poured herself into the planning. She obsessed over every detail of her gown, coordinated with florists and caterers, and bragged to anyone who'd listen about her emotionally evolved husband and how grateful she was for his forgiveness. Dominic had already faded from the picture once she realized Cameron had stopped reacting. She believed she'd rebuilt her image, restored the marriage, and reclaimed control. Yes, there had been missteps, but she told herself she had made amends. Cameron had moved on. She felt secure. She was deeply mistaken. The night arrived. The Lakeshore Club's ballroom shimmered with luxury and celebration. Joanna glided through the room in a backless gown of pale gold, radiating elegance. Cameron looked composed in a tailored navy suit, his expression calm, his manner poised. Glasses clinked. Cameras flashed. The first toast was Joanna's. 30 years, she said lightly, holding the microphone with practiced grace. It hasn't been perfect. What marriage is, but love means choosing one another over and over, even when it's hard. She turned toward Cameron. And I'm grateful for a man who continues to choose me. Cameron rose slowly and accepted the mic. He locked eyes with her and offered a smile. She smiled back, unaware. He began. 30 years, he echoed. And if you'll allow me, I'd like to tell a brief story. The crowd quieted. It's a story about loyalty, about betrayal, and the quiet toll of enduring both. Joanna's face began to change. Cameron opened a slim black folder he'd brought with him. Those of you who know me, he said evenly, know I don't seek conflict. But tonight, I want to speak plainly. He began to read aloud, methodically, calmly, emails, text messages, credit card logs, flirtatious exchanges, images of Joanna entering a boutique hotel on nights she'd claimed to be with friends. His tone was even. The room froze. Joanna went pale. "Cameron, please," she whispered. But he continued. There was no yelling, no insults, only facts. He paused once to say, "You gave me 30 years, Joanna. I gave you loyalty, love, and a home. And you gave me routine while chasing chaos." Then he looked out at the room. "I don't share this for pity or spectacle. I share it because silence too often shelters the wrong people." And then the final line, "This isn't a celebration, this is goodbye." He returned the mic to its stand, walked past Joanna without a glance, and exited the ballroom. The crowd remained frozen. Slowly, people began slipping away, murmuring. Joanna tried to spin it as a mistake, a misunderstanding, but the damage had already taken root. Guests left in silence. Her best friend Tessa didn't offer a word. Even the photographer began packing up early. Back home, Cameron's quiet plan unfolded with perfect timing. The locks had already been changed. Joanna's access to their finances and systems had been cut. His accounts had been separated well in advance. By morning, her belongings were delivered in neatly labeled boxes. On the kitchen counter sat the letter. "Joanna, we built this life together piece by piece, but you undermined it quietly and deliberately. This isn't revenge, it's freedom. I gave you 30 years. Now I'm giving the rest to myself." Joanna was erased from the foundation of their shared life. Her name vanished from property titles, company holdings, and vacation homes. With no prenup in place, she was entirely vulnerable. Cameron's legal team had executed everything with surgical precision. Within 48 hours, she was gone, out of the house, disconnected from the wealth, teetering on the edge of social exile. But the greatest loss wasn't financial. It was internal. Because Cameron hadn't exploded in rage. He hadn't destroyed her reputation. He simply revealed the truth and forced her to see it. That first night, Joanna didn't cry. She sat numb in a cramped third-story rental she never imagined occupying. The mattress was stiff. The heating faltered. Her phone buzzed, but not with comfort. She was removed from the book club group chat. Her name vanished from the alumni board. Her trusted stylist suddenly had no open appointments. Social rejection didn't come with fireworks. It arrived like a closing door, quiet and final. No one called her a victim. Everyone knew the truth. She had betrayed a good man, and now she was beyond redemption. A week later, she unfolded Cameron's letter again. This time, she absorbed every word. You chipped away at the foundation. Now she understood. She had married a builder, a man who created lasting structures, and she had dismantled it all, lie by lie. What stung most was how he left, without cruelty, without vengeance. He simply walked away and left her alone in the debris. Meanwhile, Cameron was rebuilding, not with another partner, not to prove anything, but with purpose. He began jogging at sunrise along Lakeshore Drive. He volunteered with a mentorship program for young veterans. He reconnected with his brother out west and planned a road trip through Oregon with Ashley. Ashley had texted that night, "I've never been more proud of you. I don't even recognize Mom anymore." Cameron responded, "She was someone I loved, and someone I've now let go." He wasn't pretending the hurt hadn't happened. He was honoring it, then moving forward. Some nights his hand would drift in search of her while he slept, a reflex lingering from a time when she was still beside him. A familiar melody might play from a passing speaker or coffee shop stereo, and suddenly he'd be back in that sunlit kitchen with her, both of them barefoot and laughing over burnt toast. A piece of her remained with him always, but that version of her belonged to the past, like a framed photo from a house he no longer claimed as his own. Joanna, meanwhile, was unraveling. She tried to reach out, a few hesitant emails, a voicemail that ended abruptly. Then a letter came in the mail, written by hand and faintly scented with vanilla, her signature fragrance. In looping, uneven handwriting, she admitted, "I don't understand why I did what I did. Maybe I felt unseen. Maybe I confused stillness with neglect. But I never stopped loving you." Cameron read it once, carefully folded it, then placed it in a drawer marked only "Before." He felt no urge to answer. Her actions had already delivered the response. Dominic, the man she had sacrificed everything for, had vanished just days after the party. He thrived on turbulence but shirked all responsibility. She had no career waiting for her. She'd never needed one. No close-knit friendships to fall back on. Most had been connected to Cameron, and their allegiance was unwavering. Even Ashley had begun to let her calls go unanswered. 3 months in, Joanna found herself gripping a tissue in a therapist's office. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "I used to believe I had it all, but now I see." He was everything. The therapist didn't reply, only nodded. Some realizations come too late to make a difference. That same weekend, Cameron was in a quiet workshop while snow dusted the windowsills. Ashley had brought him an old bookshelf from her childhood. "Think you can fix it?" she asked, watching as he traced a crack along its side. "I don't fix things," he said softly. "I rebuild them." She smiled, eyes tender. "Just like you did." Later that night, he sat by the fire with a steaming cup of coffee, thumbing through East of Eden, a book Joanna had once given him. She crossed his mind, not with bitterness, not with longing, but with a settled quiet. He had loved her. She had broken that love. And he had given the only reply a man like him could offer, a life where she no longer belonged. As winter gave way to spring, the city's curiosity moved on. Joanna Decker's very public collapse faded from the headlines. New dramas filled the silence. But those who had known the Deckers best remembered, not because of scandal, but because of Cameron's quiet, dignified exit. There were no outbursts, no vengeance, just a man who left without spectacle, and in doing so took with him the last of her influence. Joanna relocated once more, now residing in a drab one-bedroom apartment near the freeway. She volunteered once a week at a neighborhood nonprofit, mostly to keep herself from falling further. The woman who once chose candles based on seasons now bought whatever was on clearance. It wasn't the financial loss that lingered. It was the collapse of respect. The reputation she'd spent years cultivating had disintegrated. Former friends no longer called. New ones kept their distance. Every interaction felt charged, every glance heavy, not always because of others, but because guilt has a way of shouting louder than any voice around you. Her therapist had once told her, "You can build a future again, but scars are the price." Only now did she understand what that meant. Cameron, by contrast, had found a quiet sort of success. He bought a modest cottage near a lake, a bit over an hour from the city. Nothing extravagant, just enough to breathe. His mornings began with silence, coffee in hand, NPR humming in the background, and notes for the novel he'd longed to write, but had never before had the clarity or freedom to start. His afternoons were spent mentoring teens at a local youth center, teaching them the basics of woodworking, how to double-check a measurement, how to let patience guide their hands. Anything worth keeping needs a strong foundation, he'd tell them, and that includes you. They called him Coach Cam. One warm Sunday in May, Ashley visited with her newborn. She placed the baby in Cameron's arms and smiled. "His name is Matthew Cameron, after you." As Cameron looked down at the tiny child, something shifted deep within. Not closure. He'd found that long ago. This was something else. Continuity. A quiet reminder that healing doesn't just close old wounds, it opens space for new beginnings. Then, a final echo from the past. A letter arrived, slipped into a lavender envelope. No perfume this time, just 5 brief lines. Cameron, I saw a photo of Ashley and the baby. He looks like you. I hope he becomes everything you are. Jay. There was no return address, no request for another chance, only acknowledgement. And that was enough. Cameron read it once, then fed the paper to the fire. Some stories aren't meant to be archived. They're meant to be let go. That night he walked to the lake's edge. The breeze was light. The trees stood still. And for the first time in 30 years, his soul was completely quiet.